So let's open our Bibles to Luke first. I'm going to read two parallel passages. Maybe for the sake of time, let's change that to Mark, and I'll just read one of these passages. This is of the raging sea. Some thoughts about that this evening. Mark chapter 4, verse 35. And the same day, Mark chapter 4, beginning with 35. And the same day, when even was come, he saith unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there was also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? That's really an interesting statement, isn't it? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? So we're all very familiar with that story. The Sea of Galilee, just kind of, it's also called the Lake Gennesaret, and it's got four names actually. The Sea of Galilee was 700 feet, approximately 700 feet, below the Mediterranean Ocean, or the Mediterranean Sea. And so it was real deep. And then it went down another 120 feet. So it's like 120 feet deep in its deepest part. And it was surrounded on three sides. The north side and the west side and the south side by mountains. On the east side, the mountains went up as high as 2,700 feet. So, and so what happened was, you know, when you have a place that's down low, inland, it heats, it gets really warm. 2,700 feet up, it's much cooler. The adiabatic rate is, I think, 4 degrees per 1,000 feet, so it's cooler. And so, you know, the air over the lake is rising, and it's, you know, if it's really a hot day, and it's hot, it's warm, or it's cooler on the mountain, and so the air then comes racing down the valleys into the lake. The lake was 8 miles wide, 13 miles long. So it was a pretty large lake. So this was what would cause some of the great storms that happened. It was, you know, as we read the Bible, it seems like it's all the time, but I'm sure it was rare, you know, particularly this kind of a storm or this degree of a storm would have been rare. At any rate, the weather no doubt was fine. When they got into their boats, it says that Mark tells us there were several boats. They got into their boats and started across the 8-mile journey across to the other side. But as they got somewhere in the inner part of the lake, center of the lake or something, this raging storm came. And by the way, maybe it wasn't all just natural. Maybe the Lord purposed That's one of the things we'll see here, is the Lord has a purpose for everything that happens, and we are given to us. It's recorded for us, and that purpose is that we might learn, that we might be encouraged, that we might be able to withstand in the day of temptation, in a day of trial. God prepares us for what we must endure or what we must go through. So it tells us that they were fearful. And in this passage, there's two kinds of fear. We see both of them here. In Mark chapter 4, verses 40 and 41, it says, "And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And then in verse 41, it says, "And they feared exceedingly." Well, those are the two kinds of fear. The one is terror. They were in this boat. It was filled with water. The wind is threatening to capsize it. So, they are terrified, and they woke Christ up. So that's one kind of fear. The other kind of fear that we experience as humans is the kind of fear that is in the next verse 41. They feared exceedingly, they were now out of the danger and everything, but now they were looking at the Master, they were looking at Christ, and they realized that, hey, the wind and the water obey him. What kind of man is this? That was their question. What kind of man is this? That even the sea obeys him. Leviticus tells us, ye shall fear, that is, fear or reverence, be afraid, every man of his mother and his father. Keep my Sabbaths, I am the Lord your God. Today, there is no fear of mother and father. There's no respect. And that word fear means to fear. It means to reverence or respect mother and father. Paul in Ephesians tells us concerning servants or slaves, bond slaves. And we struggle every time we hear the word bond slave because it's so adverse to our thinking. But the real thing, I think the lesson there is that, there's something more important than living this life free. And that's living the next life free. Not living the next life in the lake of fire, but in the kingdom of God. And so the next life is far more important than this life. That's the lesson that we need to learn. We kind of know it up here. Lots of people don't know it up here even. And so they're more concerned about this life, more concerned about somebody that might be in bondage. But I'm not unconcerned about that individual. I think slavery is wrong. Absolutely. But I think God is telling us, you need to understand the truly important things. And the way he tells us what is truly important sometimes is harsh, and it's kind of harsh. Okay, so he tells us, servants, obey them that have the rule over you. No, he doesn't say that. He says, obey them that are your masters, according to the flesh, with fear. And that fear, again, it means fear, dread, terror, respect, and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ. Serve them as you would serve Christ. That's what he says. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. A lot of dumb people out there, huh? Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Harmful fear. So that's good fear, healthy fear. Harmful fear is terror, dread, these kinds of things. Matthew tells us, fear not them that kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. Saying, fear God. We don't want to run around being terrorized by God, but we should understand that he alone has the power of life and death, eternal death. Philippians tells us in 1:28, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries. So this is a good one. And in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is an evident token of perdition or ruin to them. If we run around afraid of somebody that says, you have no right to preach the gospel. Nonsense. We live in a free country. We have every right to preach the gospel. So he says, don't be afraid of them, those people. He tells us, don't be terrified by them, and they will understand that and become fearful for their own lives before God. In Proverbs 28:1, the wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. The unbelieving have good reason to fear. John 3:16 tells us, and through 18, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already. He that is condemned already, because he believeth not in the name of the only begotten Son of God. So they have good reason to fear, and they will fear. They might today mock God and say lots of things. I've heard all kinds of things. I've heard, somebody saying stuff like, I'll meet you in hell. Well, there's somebody that at least is trying to be bold, but to mindless is what they are. But there are those that will fear God. Revelation chapter 6, verses 15 through 17. The kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks and in the mountains, and said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come. This is in Revelation where it's talking about that. The fool has said in his heart, David tells us, there is no God. The fool has no fear. I wonder how much he really does not have fear. So as I mentioned, as we started, God gives us his word to instruct us, to have us ready for those things that we'll encounter in life, and to be encouraged along the path of life. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable unto doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect. See, this is what God desires, that we might be perfect, mature, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. So the miracles that Jesus did, how do they, he calmed the sea, and the water ceased. In Proverbs or Psalms talks about the fact that, hey, God has power over the oceans and the seas. We need to understand, as Christ did that, the power of God, and that's what they were awestruck over, they feared over, was to see that God is all-powerful. So we should see that. He gave us this picture so we could see it and we could understand it. So the next big hurdle or difficulty that comes to life, we realize and can be reminded, my God can deal with it. My God can deal with it. I don't have to have a nervous breakdown. I don't have to weep. I don't have to do whatever we do in times of great stress. I don't have to. I can go to Him. Then they went on to say, that what kind of man is this? What manner of man is this? Well, He was more than a man, wasn't He? He was the Son of God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were created by Him, and without Him was not anything created that was made. So He was more than a man. So when they said, what manner of man is this? He was a man like you've never seen before. Never seen before. Brother Jeremiah, you come.